Where can the Jaguars find some more weapons? How about the Senior Bowl? Got my boy Brandon Olsen from Locked On Gators here to let us know.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, good people? This is your man Tony Wiggins here, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Glad to have you with us, making us your first listen because it's your team every day, and we thank you for doing that. Also, we're free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you tap in Locked On Jaguars, like, subscribe, all of that stuff. We are free, as I just said. Today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com. With so much talk about Trevor Lawrence being generational and the letter that he penned to the franchise, which absolutely blew my mind, it made me think we're not picking high anymore. The Jaguars are picking 24th. How can they find the talent that they have usually and normally found high in the draft, even though they haven't been very good? How can they find the talent and maybe find another generational player? Guys like Travis Kelce, Gronk, Kittle, that second round, and I think fifth round for George Kittle. Mark Andrews, I believe he was a late first or a second round pick. So many guys, Fred Warner, guys like that have made a tremendous difference. Chris Jones was a second round pick, and he is right there neck and neck with Aaron Donald, if not peaking a little bit ahead of Aaron Donald. So there are guys there. There were a couple of guys last year who were at the Senior Bowl, guys that were pretty much on an all-pro level this year. We got to find someone. We're not going to be picking high, and they don't have a bunch of salary cap space. So how can they do it? Tell you what, I'm going to bring my homeboy in here who's going to let us know exactly how it goes. I'm talking about Brandon Olsen, my brother from another mother from Locked On Gators. What's up, man?
What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. You know, I sometimes I don't like doing, podcasts with other people when my team is bad, but now that my team's good, I'm trying to have guest after guest after guest and sit here and gloat with my cheeks all swollen up and from smiling so much. How about you? You doing good?
Yeah, it's hard to complain, man. It's hard. I wish that my show team was a bit better, but I'll take what I can get for now.
But you know what? Sometimes bad teams make good ratings. I know because I built my ratings on a team being bad, and it is refreshing to know that there's someone else. So Brandon and I, if y'all don't know, Brandon does Locked On Gators, but Brandon works a lot with us on Locked On NFL. So he's not just a college guy. So that's why I decided to have him here today. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Jaguars, where they are, how they're currently constructed, and I can let Brandon even ask me some stuff about their season. But then what we're going to talk about is how they are able to procure talent without a bunch of salary cap space or having a super early pick in the draft, because they picked 24th this year. But there have been historically a lot of players that are Hall of Fame level that they got to get lucky again. There's Hall of Fame level players that are picked in the second and third round. We were together at Senior Bowl last year. We'll bring some of those guys up in segment 2. And then in segment 3, I'll ask Brandon about some of the guys who are at Senior Bowl this year. Now, I went to Senior Bowl last year. As I said, I wasn't able to make it this year because I missed so much time from work, going in and out of hospital and vacations and all of that stuff. And I had to say, you know what? I got to stay home and work a little bit because people are going to give up on me. But Brandon was there. He was there in spirit. He was there physically. So he saw everything. And I've been telling all of the listeners of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, by the way, if you're new, welcome. Jump right on in. You don't have to worry about fitting in because we're all misfits over here a little bit. So my thing is I was going to bring someone on who had actually gone to the Senior Bowl to give us an idea of some of the players. And Brandon is that dude. So let me ask you, man, did you follow the Jaguars this season? I know you did.
Yeah, I did, of course. Have to.
Yeah. So is there anything about this team that screams one-hit wonder, that screams Milli Vanilli? Or do you think because they have Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson that it really does look like something that has some legs to go for a long time?
I definitely think the Jaguars are a team that they're here to stay. Like, and the funny part was the Jags got roasted for all the free agency moves they made last year. It was Christian Kirk's making too much money, Zay Jones making too much money, all these guys making too much money, and then those guys showed up and played well.
Right.
And so that's one of the things where people could say whatever they want about Trent Baalke, people could say whatever they want about anybody in that organization, but the team showed up and they played well. And when their backs were up against the absolute wall in that Chargers game, they came back and they did their thing. And it was an incredible game to see. And I'm not a Jags fan. Like, this isn't me being like a home.
Right.
This was just, it was awesome to see, because I was one of the people who was like, okay, that's a lot of money in free agency. But hey, they found guys that fit their culture, fit their system, and fit their organization. And it's worked so far. And I don't see that changing this offseason.
So I'm glad you said that, because they're a little strapped with salary cap. They're going to be able to get under the cap because me, you, Ross, all of us, we all talk about it. Salary cap ain't real, right? And Trent Baalke has even come out and said it's not about cap space, it's about cash. And it's just going to be what guys ask for. So they may not be able to go out and make big, they may spend all of their money retaining guys. They might sign one player or make a move for one player, do something really, really drastic and end up with a really great player. But I think if they're going to hit lightning in a bottle, they have a generational player in Trevor. If they're going to hit lightning in a bottle, it's going to be drafting where you don't expect it to happen. Because if you go through a lot of the teams, even a lot of the teams that's left here, the two teams that are left here, they have hit on players throughout the draft, not just drafting at the top and not just signing guys in free agency. So you being a college guy, not a college guy only, but a college guy who's also been to the Senior Bowl on consecutive years, you've seen these guys, they contribute and they become superstars. And we saw them in firsthand last year. Like, nobody couldn't tell us that Christian Watson wasn't going to be good eventually, right? From what we saw in Mobile last year. So how do the Jaguars find that lightning again? And that's going to be the biggest question. We're going to talk about that in segment 2, get some names, and even in segment 3, we're going to ask Brandon about some of the guys that he covers, the Gator fans. Well, so Gator fans who are also Jaguar fans can hear a little bit about that. We'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars, after I let you know that today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently. That's right, more efficiently by matching open roles with the people who are candidates. I think it's very, very important, because when I open my barbershop, being a barber, I don't know if y'all know, but it is all about chemistry in the shop, because it could get real funny with a bunch of eccentric personalities. So LinkedIn was the place that I went to when I needed to staff my shop, and it worked for me, and it could work for you the exact same way. What I need everyone to do, if you own a small business, you need to tap in, because LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified applicants and candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I roll along here in segment 2 with my brother from another mother, Brandon Olsen of Locked On Gators. And I want to say of Locked On NFL too, man, because you're always working with us and on threads with us and doing some of the work behind the scenes with us and helping out. So we really, really appreciate that. Senior Bowl. First guy I want to ask you about that can potentially be, and I was on him 3 or 4 months ago. He got banged up and then all of a sudden shows up looking like a cyborg down in Mobile. That's tight end Luke Musgrave from Oregon State. Everyone talks about the kid from Notre Dame, and everyone talks about Dalton Kincaid. I like 2 other guys. This kid at Iowa, I believe his name's Laporta, and I love Luke Musgrave. To me, he looks the part of that big bicep tall, angular. To me, he's Mike Gesicki with guns and a little bit better blocker, and he can play a little bit better in traffic. What did you see from Luke Musgrave over at Mobile?
I thought he was going to get arrested because he was just assaulting every defender that he went up against. He was bullying people. It was kind of disgusting to see. I thought I was going to see an anti-bullying campaign. He was one of the fastest players there as a tight end. He was the 16th fastest player at the entire Senior Bowl. He hit 20.05 miles per hour while he was there. That is freakishly fast for someone his size. There was no other tight end that even came close to touching that speed. So Luke Musgrave, and it wasn't just like, oh, that kid's fast. He was fluid. He was moving around. He was dogging people. He was just going up and winning jump balls. It was wild to see him just annihilate people for a week. I felt kind of bad for defenders, but man, he just beat them up the entire time. And you mentioned earlier, you were like, oh, Travis Kelce. Luke Musgrave is not Travis Kelce. I'm not going to say that, but he could play that similar role. You know, in college, more than or almost 40% of his snaps came out of the slot, like Travis Kelce has made his money doing. So Luke Musgrave is one of those guys where he's probably going to go secondish, thirdish, and he's going to make plays, and he's probably going to make an NFL coach very happy and a quarterback.
I think he will. And for a team like Jacksonville that likes two tight end sets, and usually it's one of them's kind of a blocker, one's a pass catcher. I always said you don't want it to be fragmented like that. You kind of hope that the guy can do both. That's what made Gronk so good, right? And Mark Andrews is that guy too, where when he's in the game, you're not sitting there switching personnel saying, like, for instance, okay, Evan Ingram's in the game, stick another DB in the game, take the linebacker out. Or Chris Manhertz is in the game. You might want to go jumbo, put a Sam linebacker in, or an extra D lineman, stick an extra guy in the box because you ain't got to worry about him catching passes. I think when you can remove the aspect of telling on yourself by having a guy that's a dual threat. So my question is, since Evan Ingram's a pass catcher and everyone wants them to bring back Evan Ingram, and I think they should, and he wants to be here, can Luke Musgrave play that role of the other guy without having to move tight ends? Can he actually be the guy who's a blocker, in your opinion?
Yeah, I absolutely think he could. I think he went to Oregon State where their bread and butter the entire season was, hey, we're going to run the ball a lot and we're going to run it right down your throat. And I know he didn't play this season much. He played the first 2 games and that was it. But he was the guy who was in the system where, hey, we're going to teach you how to run block. We're going to make you be an effective player and you're going to be better at the next level because of it. It's not sexy, but guess what? Sexy doesn't win championships. Good football players win championships.
Right. And I don't want to ignore the defensive side of the ball. Last year when we were there, Tyreek Woolen, first of all, Tyreek Woolen didn't look like a corner. Second, Jalen Petrie, as well as Cameron Taylor Britt. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, because normally I say Cameron Britt Taylor, but Cameron Taylor Britt, who was a little short guy, but he was a bulldog, and he was all over the place, and he ran like the wind. Those 3 guys played extremely well, and it did not surprise me that they played huge roles on their teams this particular season. Was there anybody like that we can point to and say, okay, the Jaguars can get him in the second round because they do need corner help? You asked me how they were. They need a guy right now, I think, who can start at nickel, but eventually move to corner outside.
Yeah, I think that you look no further than Darius Rush out of South Carolina. I think he's kind of being a little overlooked just because, you know, he played with Cam Smith at South Carolina, who's thought of as one of the best corners in the class. But Darius Rush showed up with not a lot of attention on him. You know, people weren't showing up and people weren't traveling to Mobile unless you're related to Darius Rush to go see Darius Rush. But he came in, hit almost 22 miles per hour. He came in and he was locking guys down. You've been to the Senior Bowl before. You know what it's like where you see these wide receiver DB one-on-ones. It's not easy for a DB. And Darius Rush's biggest thing was he's coming from South Carolina, which is very zone heavy. So when you see Darius Rush, Julius Brents from Kansas State, both guys came in as zone heavy corners. Yeah, Julius Brents a big dude. both guys came in as zone-heavy corners, and the biggest question was, can you operate consistently in man coverage? And Mobile will show you if you can, because Mobile, you're playing man coverage a lot because those one-on-ones, you're playing a lot of man coverage. Darius Rush came in and was running the routes for receivers. He was destroying them. And it was just insane to see. Like, he's got solid size. I think he came in at like 6'1" and 3/8 or something like that. So he's got great size, great length, great speed. He's one of those players where he can step in and play early, and he's physical at the line of scrimmage. He just lit it up for me. He was probably the biggest winner on the defensive side of the ball for me.
Sounds like he has outside corner written all over him, but because of his experience in zone and from the way you say he was jumping routes, could he play nickel for a year?
Absolutely, I think so. I think he can do anything you ask.
Wow, so that's two really good names for us to keep an eye on. As usual at the Senior Bowl, there's always a lot of offensive linemen, and Jim Nagy always says it's going to be 10 of these guys that's going to play on rosters, and he wasn't lying about last year or the year before. The Jaguars tapped into Luke Fortner, who was there last year. Are there any offensive linemen that you think, besides Osiris Torrance? Because we all know you're going to mention him, but he's been one of my favorites too. He's been one of my favorites all year. Because I think with Doug Peterson, coaches like what they like. If you look at Andy Reid, you look at Kansas City, you look at the history in Philadelphia, you look at Doug Peterson's time, and even the line that's still in Philly right now, they don't hide the fact that they love huge people. Are there any huge people? Were there any huge people? You heard a lot about this kid from Oklahoma, but were there any really big people? DeJuan Jones is another one maybe, who looks the part to be like somebody better take him in round 1, 2, or 3, or round 2 or 3 because he's going to be a 10-year starter in the league.
Yeah, I think one of those guys for me is John Michael Schmitz, who's the interior offensive lineman out of Minnesota. He was always impressive in college, but he was at Minnesota, so it wasn't necessarily a very fun scheme to watch. It wasn't a great team surrounding him, but he showed up in Mobile and he came ready to play. Like, it's hard to win those one-on, like I was just talking about with DBs, it's hard to win those one-on-ones. On an offensive lineman side of things, it's equally hard to win these one-on-ones because they're geared towards defensive linemen, because you're never in a one-on-one in the NFL. So for me, if you can step in and you can win those one-on-ones, that's great for you, and that's great for your stock, and that's what John Michael Schmitz did. That's what Blake Freeland out of BYU did if you're looking more for a tackle. Same thing with Jalen Duncan. Like, they came here and they balled out, and that was impressive to see from them, especially someone like Blake Freeland from BYU, because you don't play, you play a few Big 12 teams and a couple Pac-12 teams, but you don't play Power 5 competition week in, week out. And for Blake Freeland to show up and go, I'm going to go up against NFL defensive linemen right now, and I'm going to play well, that was insane. And also, I believe amongst offensive linemen, he was the fastest offensive lineman too. So if you're trying to get someone out in space that's ready to hit people, that's Blake Freeland.
Quickly hit the edge for me, edge and interior. I'm looking for pass rushers. I'm not looking for nose guards, because I do know Keanu Benton was the talk and the rave. I thought he was coming out last year, but he was a little banged up. He's like 335 pounds, man. He's going to be a problem for some people. Who are some of the guys that can penetrate and get to the quarterback that the Jags need to maybe look at?
I really liked Carl Brooks this week, and that pains me to say, because he's a Bowling Green guy, and I went to Toledo, so that pains me to say that, but I saw him be a one-man wrecking crew against Toledo. He had, I think it was 14 pressures in that one game, and then he showed up to Mobile, and he played less edge, more interior, but the fact that he can play in between both is something that you'll always take. You guys know that. You've got so many players on that team that go inside out, and Carl Brooks was that guy for me along the defensive line. He consistently stood out. And watching him go seamlessly from working inside or outside and finding success consistently was a huge thing for me to see from him. And he came out making himself a lot of money, and he was funny when I got to meet him in person, at least. So there's that too.
So you cover the Gators. A lot of Gator fans are Jaguar fans. So I'm going to give y'all, and I'm a Seminole supporter. So, but I'm going to give Brandon a chance to shine here in segment 3. But what I want to say, what precipitated this, I hope that's the right way. That sounds like rain, but I think what led to this was I did a mock draft, and in the 6th round, I took Trey Dean, and a bunch of Jaguar fans who are Gator fans wanted to choke me, right? Yeah. But the kid goes out to another All-Star game, and because of his traits, and that's a key word to use here, because Trent Baalke is a traits guy, and Marco Wilson was a traits guy, and look at him. The dude is going to be a Pro Bowler here pretty soon if he's not already. So the thing is I'm going to give you a chance to shine and talk about your little raggedy Florida Gator football team, and I'm going to do that in just a second. I'm going to do that for the Jaguar fans who are Gator fans. I'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. FanDuel. I got to let you know that FanDuel is the newest sponsor for Locked On Jaguars. That's right. FanDuel, man, I have been dealing with FanDuel for a long time, and now I get so happy because I am able to tell all of y'all about FanDuel. They're the number one sports book in the world. That's right. And we're so excited to have them available as one of our sponsors for you to get down with. Now, let me tell you something, man. They got something going on right now, a Super Bowl bet. Now, listen to this. Super Bowl 57, you can do something called a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. You're like, what? You heard me. I did not stutter. FanDuel has no-sweat first bet in Super Bowl 57. You get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Hey, man, here's what I like. I think you got to go with the Eagles. Whatever the plus minus is, I need you to go with the Eagles. You can do money line, you can do point spread, you can do all of that stuff. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/locked-on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So segment 3 here with Brandon Olsen. The reason why I tell you whatever that number is at FanDuel is because it could change between now and game day, as the guys say, depending on where all the action is, right? So, Gervon Dexter. 2 years ago, I said Gervon Dexter is going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. Gervon Dexter, 6'6", about 320 pounds, and somehow just didn't seem like he got any better. Tell me about him, all the other Gators, including Osiris Torrance, including Trey Dean, including Brenton Cox, who, for what I heard, Brenton Cox, he better wow them, because if they have to go interview some coaches, he might not get as good a grade.
Yeah, you can say that one about B. Cox, but with Dex, he's a physical freak. That's what he is. He's height, weight, speed freak. He's an insane athlete for his size. I was pretty, if we have any listeners that listen to both of our shows, they'll know I've been pretty harsh on him because he stepped into this new defense and he seemed content to just eat double teams. And I don't I think, if I'm getting double teamed, you should probably try to shed that. He seemed like he was content taking those blocks. But if you put him in a pass rushing situation, there are few interior defensive linemen that are better than he is. And I truly do think that at the NFL level, you'll see a little bit more effort from him. He's got a family now. He's got a kid. He's either engaged or married. Like he's protecting himself in his last year of college, and I'm cool with that, honestly. If you're saving yourself to make some more money, then go do that. But he is someone that, as a gap shooter, would be just a havoc wreaker in the backfield. And I mean, iron sharpens iron, right? And he got to go up against Osiris Torrance incessantly every time in practice. And Osiris Torrance, best guard in the country, best guard in the draft. Don't care who you ask, don't care who you're talking to. If you say anybody else, you're wrong. It's Osiris Torrance. It's Cybo. You can't deny the 3,000 plus snaps without allowing a sack. The one quarterback hit he's allowed in 4 years. The most hurries he's ever allowed in a season was 10, and I think it was his freshman year. He is elite, and he is the guard in this class, and he's a perfect fit for a modern NFL offense where they're going to go, hey, when we run the ball, we're going to go wide, and we're going to get this outside, and then when we pass block, you need to be able to hold your own, and Osiris Torrance can do that. So I mean, those are the two biggest trench guys. We could talk about Brandon Cox, but honestly, for me, my biggest thing is that there are way too many plays where he just gives up. He takes himself out of the play. You could watch Florida State 2021. You see him over pursue Jordan Travis, and then he just stops. And Jordan Travis ends up cutting back his way. And Brandon Cox is already just like, nah, I'm good. I'm out on that one. And Georgia in 2022 was the same way. I am glad though that you brought up Trey Dean, because Trey Dean is someone who, for almost 2 years now, 2 coaching staffs, I've been saying is going to be a better player in the NFL than he is in college. I've been saying his ideal role is just line him up against a tight end and allow him to erase that tight end. And I truly, genuinely still stand with that. I don't care that he had these busted coverages in Gainesville. I don't care that he had these few plays that were just, what are you doing there, man? His physical skill set is an NFL physical skill set. Whether or not you like him or not, whether you think off field he's a jerk, whatever it is, he's got an NFL skill set and he's going to be playing in the NFL. And he is one of those guys where he thrives in that Shrine Bowl experience. Like you mentioned before, he thrives in that experience. Those one-on-ones, he's 6'2" and he's built out of his mind. He's going to lock you down. And that's exactly what he did. Like he's going to be a good football player in the NFL.
I'm glad you vindicated me on that, because somebody gave me a real hard time talking about Trey Dean. But coincidentally, you mentioned the Jaguars need defensive tackle help. The Jaguars need they need somebody who can guard tight ends, in a sub package where they go to a big nickel, and they carry 4 safeties. They probably have 3 on the roster that are safe, so they need another guy. And then Osiris Torrance, I think he lined up at right guard in Florida, but he can play left guard in a pinch, I assume. And the Jaguars actually need a left guard. So all of those guys that you mentioned have a shot. Dexter reminds me of, who was that defensive tackle? I don't know if it was last year or the year before. Really big guy. I think he ended up going to Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken. Real big guy in the middle of their defense. It's somebody who got drafted, big, tall dude with dreadlocks. He's like 330, 340 pounds. But there were people that told me, look, I can find it right now, but there were people that told me, no, he's not going to be that good, man, in the NFL. And he went to the combine and did not play well. But because of those traits we talk about, he got picked in the NFL. And at some point, I'll remember his name here in just a second. I'm about to pull it up for you. But that's who he reminds me of. That's exactly who Gervon Dexter reminds me of. He just reminds me of a guy who's going to be better in the NFL. And a lot of players, with your experience, you've seen that. A lot of guys have been better in the NFL than they were in college, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean that's a very frequent thing that college fans don't want to understand. Like they can understand it. They don't want to understand it, because I know Gators fans hate Trey Dean, and that's fair. You can hate him, but he's still going to be a good football player in the NFL, and he's still going to be a guy that NFL teams are going to see and they're going to like, and they're going to see that skill set and say, yeah, he had these flaws, but we can make him really good. If we use him properly, we can make him really good. He's great in man coverage, but he was playing deep safety so frequently in Gainesville, it just wasn't a good fit.
Traits. Daryl Slayton is the guy I'm talking about. And he ended up sticking around in the NFL, and you see him play some. Another guy who years ago, who's a Gator, that folks didn't believe me when he got picked. And I told him, one of my co-hosts when I was doing radio, I said, those NFL guys think they can fix anybody. Humphrey, the left tackle in Arizona. So he's another one that you don't believe it. How many people actually thought Trenton, the big tackle that plays for Green Bay, that plays for New England, how many people thought he was going to be good? He was at Florida. He was what, 6'7", 6'8", 350, 360 pounds.
I didn't think he was going to be good.
Yeah. So, but that's what I'm saying. They will take these big men and these big people, simplify it. And in the NFL, what they usually love to do is they put you in situations to do what you do best, and they keep you away from situations what you can't do. I tell you what, one thing both of us can do, we can do some podcasting now. And not only us, but the Locked On NFL crew can do it too. I'm on Wednesday with James Rapine, but every single day, Monday through Friday, it's a great podcast. And they give you all the big stories from around the National Football League. So make sure you lock in, tap in, like, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. This has been fun, man. We got to do this again as the draft approaches, when we're coming out of free agency and the draft starts to get hot and heavy. Probably Combine week. We'll get back together and do it again, B.O.
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right. Y'all don't understand my relationship with this dude, man. That's why he's sitting there like, yep, sounds good to me.
Yep.
I'm gonna put them hands on him when I see him. We got some beef. We got some beef we got to settle. And we'll take care of that also. You guys take care of each other, like I say all the time. Also, make sure you check Brandon out on the Locked On Gators podcast. Brandon, give them your Twitter information as well.
You can find me on Twitter when Twitter is working at WNS_Brandon, and I am on there all day.
So. Yes, that's all he does is tweet. All right, Bill, man, I appreciate you, man. And for all of us here at Locked On Jaguars, make sure you tune in on tomorrow every single day, making us your first listen. Take care.